Welcome to another episode of Before You Kill Yourself with your host, Leo Flowers. I am Leo Flowers. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you being here. You could be listening to so many other podcasts, but you decided to tune in to your buddy, Leo Flowers. We are pals, we're buddies, we're friends, we're familia. Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited about today's guest. We have Cara Sennett. This episode it's intense. It's deep, and but you're gonna enjoy it. There's so many nuggets in this. I took like a million notes in this episode, and I say it's intense, not in the graphic Saw horror movie intensity. That movie's just disgusting. Because one of the things when I have guests on who are talking about their traumas, I try to get them to, I try to get them, I am encouraging them to not share the details of the traumatic experiences. You know, it's like trauma is trauma. We don't need to get into the weeds of things, and so so Kara is alluding to traumatic experiences, but at no point are we getting into the minute details of any of it. But with that said, I will say that you know things may come up for you during this episode, so have somebody that you are ready to call, that you can email, that you can reach out to. Don't listen to this before bed is what I'm trying to tell you. You know, listen to this, during a hike, or maybe go get an acai bowl after, or get some mangoes, or go toss a frisbee or something after. So I think a lot of times we take in information, news, stories, and we think we can handle it because we're adults. But the truth of the matter is that it gets stored in our tissues, and so if we don't have a way of releasing it, whether it's through yoga or foam rolling, or just going outside having a little chit chat, so have a way to decompress after this episode, or listen to it in bits and pieces. But I enjoyed this episode from beginning to end. We talked about how to set boundaries. Cara is an 18-year Army veteran in England, and she has kids. She's married, has a dog, and has attempted suicide 3 times, and struggles with anxiety, depression, and is currently in therapy. So we get to hear a journey, and she reminded me at the end of the episode, after we stopped recording, that she's just now starting her mental health journey. And this is years after seeking mental health and just trying to find the right team, the right people. And so we get to hear all of that, and what she's learned, and the books that she's read, and how she copes with nightmares. And we talked about setting boundaries with her kids and her family, and how she self soothes, and it's just so many nuggets in here, and the different iterations of her therapeutic journey, and how she has learned to express her feelings as time goes on. Uh, Once again, if you feel like you are in a crisis situation, please go into the show notes. There are numbers, no matter where you are in the world, to the 1-800 suicide number, the 1-800-273-TALK. If you're international, their phone numbers, no matter where you are, if you're in England, Asia, Malaysia, wherever, South Peru, but no matter where you are, there's a number in the show notes for you. So you can call, you can talk, you can text, you can chat, and they're groups. There are resources there for you. So you can always go to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching with yours truly. If you are struggling with feeling alone, abandoned, not connected, and you're just thriving, if you're that person that's thriving in your career, but you're suffering in your relationships, go to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching. And let's get to tomorrow together. With that said, let's jump into the episode. What part of England are you?
It's a small town called County Durham, and it's the northeast part of England, so around Newcastle and Sunderland area.
I invited you on because we follow each other on Twitter, and you've been so vulnerable and sharing your stories and what you've been going through in terms of struggling with depression, anxiety, CPTSD. Is that what that chronic pain, post traumatic stress?
It's complex PTSD, so it's not just a single event. There's multiple of events and traumas that I've had to deal with. So it's not just as simple as one traumatic event. There's lots to it. So I was previously just diagnosed with complex PTSD. So it's a lot more to peel back and work out.
And you are currently in therapy for that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So can you give us some backstory on the, without too much detail, but of what were the events that culminated into the CPTSD?
Yeah, I mean, my therapist, when I first met her, it was a lot, how was your childhood? And, I would shut that down straight away and go, yeah, it was fine. My mum was there, my dad left on and off, and he was a bit of an alcoholic. So, but to me, I wasn't abused in any way, I wasn't hurt in any way, so it was just a normal childhood. But the more and more I've been vulnerable with her and opened up, the more actually, yes, my dad was an alcoholic, my granddad died when I was, I want to say 14, 16, something like that. And he lived in Canada. So whenever he came across, there was just such a massive love and affection that I had for him. He was just mesmerizing. I adored him. So when he passed away from cancer, and I was told about this, I was sat on the stairs and no one asked me if I was all right. And I just carried on like nothing had ever happened. My mum never said, are you okay? And neither did my dad. And, and then he left in and out of our lives constantly, and was an alcoholic. But it never affected me at the time, I would say. I was more, I was always wanting to join the army from a really young age. I was in the cadets and I absolutely loved it. It was such a passion of just traveling and meeting new people and giving everything a go. So I was 17, just not long before I turned 18 and went to join the army, and off I went. I was in for about 2 years, 3 years max. I went to my new unit, and unfortunately there, after about a year or so, I was sexually abused, harassed, bullied, by my sergeant at the time, in front of officers who you would think would stop these or, say something or speak up. So you try not to let anybody know, you just laugh it off or brush it away, just think that it's the norm because you don't say anything about it, you just accept it. You think it's joke and a banter, but you don't want to turn around and say that's you've stepped the line there. So that was like the first instance. And then I carried on with my career because, I just thought it'll be okay. Things will turn around, which they did because, I met my husband and I had a baby and things was going really good. I went to Afghan the first time round, which was just such a life experience for me and the best tour I ever had, and I came off that with getting promoted and it was just outstanding and really just such a sense of passion and worth, a meaning, and just seeing the camaraderie between people and the get together and the buddy system that you have to support each other. It was just outstanding, you know what I mean? And it was powerful. I was home for about a year and then said I'll go again. And unfortunately, on that tour, things just didn't work out. I just was overworked, unsupported, alone, isolated. So many factors to that tour. And on that tour was one of the times when, things got a bit out of hand. I got some medical help and just tried to carry on from there. And that was in 2014. But you just sense that something's wrong. Something's just not quite right. And things just started to begin and spiral out of control from there, really.
And when you say spiral out of control, um, there were moments where, as I followed the feed and read your blogs, I know that there were a few attempts.
Mm-hmm.
After your last attempt, what did you do to pull yourself out of that? Like, how did you how did you pull yourself from the last attempt?
Um, the last attempt, it was the day before my son's 10th birthday. And, my husband came in, I was pushing everybody away. You just don't want to hear anything. You don't want to be vulnerable with anyone. You don't trust anyone. And he came in and I screamed and shouted at him and walked out. And, tablets, medication that I was on for chronic pain were just an outlet. But when that happened and I was out walking, I just left the house and went. It was either I collapse here or I need to do something. So I messaged a friend and said, "Oh, are you in?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, she replied, "Do you want to go for a walk?" I was like, "The only place I need to go is hospital." So fortunately, she drove me to hospital and I got sorted there. But I was then referred to the crisis team. And when they came to see me in the hospital, at the time when I was leaving the army, I had a person called a personal recovery officer who's a one-to-one that you go to, who's meant to support you and guide you in your transition with leaving the army. And she come and was just, you need to talk to somebody, you need to tell them what's going on. But by this time, I'd been let down so many times by other therapists, people leaving, not being able to open up because you just didn't know how to feel any of these emotions or what they were and what was going on, really. It was just so confusing and painful. But I sat there in the hospital when my son came in to open his presents and I said, "What have I done?" And that's the most gut-wrenching thing. So when the crisis team came, I told them everything, just opened my heart and said, "I need help," So when I met a therapist 3 days later after I was released from hospital, she said to me, "Would you do it again?" And I just said yes, because I knew I needed some serious help. So when I said yes and that I couldn't say that I would be safe, I was then placed into hospital for about 3 weeks it was.
At that time, and I really want to highlight this point. It sounds like you said yes, even though maybe you were feeling no because you were you didn't want to do that to your son again. And
Mhm.
I think that a lot of us are undergoing pain that's at like a 5 or a 6 on a scale of 10. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to say the pain is at a 10 so that we can get our pain levels down to a 1 or 0. Because if we keep walking around saying I'm okay, it's manageable, it's about a 5 or 6, then you don't really get the help that you really need. Because
Yeah.
as suffering with chronic pain and any other type of pain, it's not always at a 10, right? Like we're
Mhm.
not always wanting to end our lives, but
Mhm.
and so they might ask you at a moment where you're at a 3 or a 5, but
Mhm.
that 10 is right around the corner. So it's always better to say, I'm at a 10 so that you can get the help you need and then you can scale it back versus this continuous acting as if um, we're at a 4 or a 5. But sometimes we do have to, um, I don't want to say exaggerate it, but
Mhm.
w- uh, share what we've been going through at our lowest so that we
Mhm.
can get the best help get the help at its highest.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Mhm. You know, people don't want to ask for help. I think they've, especially the military side of it, we are so, you know, told to be strong, be brave, never show any weakness or vulnerability, or you basically turned into this robot of emptiness or no feelings. Like I didn't even like somebody said to me, "How do you feel?" It's either happy or sad. Yeah, I'm fine. But there isn't. There's, I'm scared or I'm sad today, or actually I feel a bit on edge, or there's so many more feelings and emotions out there that people don't understand. And I never understood any of it because I never had any feelings when I was growing up. And I never certainly had any feelings in the army because you were told not to feel, basically. So trying to be vulnerable and open and honest is some of the hardest things that I've had to do in order to get better, really.
And I would imagine that being open and honest has increased the intimacy in your marriage with your husband and increased the closeness with you and your son.
Yes, I mean, the therapist I'm with now, since I've left the army, because things just weren't things weren't right. So I met this new therapist, and I don't know what I've learned in the past year and a half, and how I've grown is I don't even know how to explain it. It's life transforming, really. To sit and have a conversation with my son after I've screamed and shouted at him, to be able to explain, sorry I did that, and I apologize more to him rather than just scream my head off and give him a slap because it's not right. But that's my temperament at that time, which is reducing more and more and more. Now with my husband, you know, it's been probably the most hardest 4 years of our lives. We were very close to getting a divorce and separating. I kicked him out time and time again because I was relying on pain medication, alcohol. You know, I was out drinking, partying, and just left him really to deal with the kids. And I didn't want anything to do with him, but it's what you do to cope, But now I'm being a lot more vulnerable with him. I'm not fully there yet, you know, but I'm able to say, look, I just don't feel it at the moment, or I'm not happy today, And now I'm coming home and more and tell him, oh, this is what I did in therapy today, So it's growing, and it is, it has made us so much more closer. And there's a new us, if you know what I mean now, compared to what we were 4 years ago, which was two separate people living in a house.
So what you said the therapy that you're undergoing right now, the past year and a half has been life transforming.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us, especially the listeners, and be as detailed and really take your time because there's so many people out there who don't have access to life transforming therapy, for different reasons. And as you said, you had to go through a number of therapists to find this therapist. So, what are
Mm-hmm.
some of the applicable things that you've learned that you've put into practice to help that's been life transforming for
Well, at the beginning, I wouldn't talk. I'd just be like, yeah, I'm fine, let's crack on. But it was just, you've got to click with a person. You've got to be able to be vulnerable with this person and share every single feeling and emotion that you're feeling to be able to move forward. I did some therapy called EMDR therapy. And I was trying my best to, express how I was feeling, the situation, where it was going. But it was too traumatic for me and I just couldn't cope with it. Now, the most amazing thing was they don't just fob you off and think, oh, well, that therapy hasn't worked. It's not going to work for you. She sat and she researched herself and was like, right, we're going to do this therapy now. And now I'm doing a narrative exposure therapy. And we set out a timeline from when I was born to where I'm at now. And a flower would represent something good, or a stone would represent trauma, a candle would represent loss. So we did a timeline through my life, and we're just working through this timeline at the moment. Now, along with that, it's about education. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know any words to how to even express what was going on in my head or anything. And sometimes in a session, I was unable to express these feelings, and it would confuse me so much. But it wouldn't be till like the next morning at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock when I'm like not able to sleep because of all this emotion and thoughts going through my head, where, I was able to just email and get it down, writing it down, thinking, this is what I'm thinking. This is what is happening, or I'm feeling, or the thoughts, can you make any sense out of this? Because I can't. But then the next time I would see her, she would be like, right, this is it. These are the reasons why you're feeling this way. Like lockdown, when this lockdown happened in COVID, I was struggling to feel like I would cope. And I even said to my husband, I want to go back to hospital because I don't think I'm going to cope. I don't think I can survive. And I was not understanding why. Now, what happened in Afghanistan when I was there, these are linked together. So it's the lockdown, the isolation, the loneliness. So it's triggers. So, COVID has triggered me a lot. And I'm learning to cope every time there's a new lockdown, to be able to just keep them feelings and let them and feel them, and not run away from them and think that you're never going to be able to cope or they're going to be too strong. And then another thing was, I think I started with her in the March and I was going away in the April to Dunkirk in France to do some work. And she said, go and read this book. And it was a book by Brené Brown called Daring Greatly. So on the train ride there, I found the nearest bookshop in the train station and rang them and said, have you got it? And they were like, yes, I've got one. And I read it and it was just eye-opening, So again, it's education and taking your time to learn, because if you want to get better and you want it so badly that you're willing to do anything, to read, to learn, to listen, to be vulnerable and be honest and open.
That book, Brene Brown, I forget, The Power of Vulnerability, I think was her first book. I don't quite remember, but she does
Mhm.
talk a lot about vulnerability. What were
Mm.
some of your takeaways from that book, Daring Greatly, or at least one takeaway? What stood out to you?
There was just, I can't think of one particular one really. I know she was going on a lot about the veterans and that she's worked with, and it was just vulnerability. The word alone is stuck with me, because I think she says vulnerability is not weakness, and it's not. It's so you are so strong and so powerful when you are being vulnerable, because you grow by being vulnerable. You know, just think of who the person I was um, just over a year and a half ago. I'm not who the person I am now. I mean, I would not be doing this. I would not be doing videos for the NHS to say that the treatment I'm receiving has been outstanding. I just wouldn't do that because I wouldn't have the confidence or the belief, the self belief even, that I'm good enough or worthy enough to do anything like that.
Well, I definitely want to thank you for having the courage and vulnerability to share your story. I know this it's not easy to
Hmm.
reshare your narrative. I
Hmm.
do love that on your recent Twitter post, you talked about how when we do share our story, it's a way of for other people to help other people heal because maybe they can learn something from your story, and also it helps us to grow when we share what we've been through. And that doesn't mean wallow in it. I think that a lot of people have
Hmm.
struggle with sharing their story because they don't want to sound like they're complaining or like they are a victim. And really, it's in the sharing of our story that allows us to grow, evolve, and transform as you've shared.
Yeah. I mean, I've only, I think lockdown was when I first started to write my first blog. And I just thought, I've got feelings in me, I've got thoughts and emotions and stories of what I've done or what's happened to me. And yes, I can be angry at the people that have done it, or I can be angry at the world. And I am angry at times. You can't be angry forever. And, that's something again that I'm probably still learning. But I just think there's so many people out there that are so scared to be vulnerable or say, I'm struggling or I'm hurting. And, you know, I just think if it reaches one person, my story or a blog or a post, and it has done, people have messaged me and said, I can really relate to that. I think the one about my granddad, where I said about suppressing emotions, because I'm so good at doing that, keeping it all hidden away and tucked down. And it's not healthy because I suppressed all that and it come back to bite me in the butt 20 years later. So another post I shared on my Facebook about suicide, a girl who I hadn't spoke to for 15 years messaged me and said, I'm really struggling. And what you've just shared, is it okay to open up to you and just say that this is what I'm struggling with? And she attempted herself. And, she's in the beginning of her journey. And just to say to her that it is going to be hard. These journeys aren't easy, but the outcome of where you can be, how you can grow and then learn and enjoy your life. Yes, there'll be blips and there'll be ups and downs still. You know, the memories, the nightmares, they'll happen, but it's about just accepting them and not hiding away from them or suppressing them, just feeling it in that moment and accepting them.
So when you do have a nightmare, what's your process for that? Do you stay in bed? Do you get up and write? Do you pace around the house? What's your protocol?
No, normally it's a 3 o'clock email. Either I'll email the therapist to go, I can't sleep because this has happened, or this is what I'm feeling. Or I have to have the bedroom window open just to feel the breeze. And, if that's shut and it happens, I have to immediately open the window and just breathe. Um, I come downstairs and just, at the moment, sometimes I'd self wallow after a nightmare and think, gosh, these are annoying. But I seen, I can't even remember where I seen it, a post saying, after a nightmare, why don't you get up, go outside, look at the clouds, take a deep breath, and just watch them move. And it's just everything's moving away. And I was like, wow, that's such a great, process, and I must try that next time. So that is my next goal, to give that a go.
I love that. It's
Hmm.
one of the reasons when I'm upset or anxious, I like to go to a farmer's market because I mean, and I know it's tough right now in the lockdown, but it just reminds me that things are still moving. Or,
Mm,
when you go on a nature walk, or even I think that's part of the beauty of walking along the beach is the you see the waves coming and going, like nothing is in a permanent state.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
so it becomes a reminder that our emotions, our feelings, our whatever we're going through, like the nightmare doesn't last forever. It's intermittent, and sometimes they're going to be stronger than others.
yeah, exactly. There's ups and downs. I have difficulties with driving vehicles now. I mean, it never bothered me. I drive all night and all day, and from other countries to back home. You know, after tour, things just weren't right. So now I have to listen to my body and know when things are changing, know when, my hands start clenching, my jaw tightens, my I get pins and needles in my feet, and you I do I dissociate a lot. So I need to realize when these are happening, and now they're doing a tapping, butter tapping. So I cross my arms and tap on each shoulder, and you know watch my parachute jump video, or play a good song that's happy memories, or listen to something just positive, to be able to just bring myself back down and ground myself. There's so many techniques out there. It's just finding the right one for you to get through that traumatic experience at that time.
I love the tapping, something I definitely have done also, where I tap the middle of my forehead or
Hmm.
different parts of my body. For the listeners out there, and also just so I can hear, have you distinguished the difference between depression and suicidality? Like in
Um,
terms of how that feels to the body?
I I go through depressive episodes, like, and I can feel low, and not fully with the day to day life of things. Um, but on the three attempts that I've done it, there's different types, I feel. So the first was like I cried for help. So you know, I knew I needed to talk to somebody, because I knew I needed to report what was happening, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want my life to end. I just needed some help. Um, but on the second time, I was so disassociated with, like, in that moment, it was like watching, how I explained it to my therapist, it was like watching a movie from far back, and I'm watching this process unfold, but stuck in a way of, what, I don't understand what's happening here. And it was honestly as if I'd just like woken up from a sleep or a dream or a nightmare or whatever, to think, what on earth was I doing? And then, the next time was, no, I want to end my life. Like, I am at rock bottom when I don't feel anything. I feel numb. I feel empty. My body, you can feel the body in physical pain. Like, it's amazing what the body can do and make you feel. When I have a depressive episode, you're able to say, it's okay, this is going to pass. Like, you can function more, I feel, for myself. I don't know whether I'm probably going off track here, but you know when you are suicidal, at that point of what the point? What is the point? There's no point. Just I'd rather not be here. That's a scary point to be at. And like I did a post the other day. Would you ring for help if you felt suicidal? And I think nearly 80% people said no. You know, how do you catch that point to stop somebody or stop yourself?
Do you have a routine that you and your therapist have worked on to kind of mitigate and help manage the emotions, the pain, the depressive episodes?
Um, I mean, I think it's just a factor of all sorts of, you know, reading a good book, listening to a good book, you know, listening to podcasts, getting out in nature, calling a friend, like telling somebody that you're not okay. Um, because I've learned to just deal with it on my own for so long. The hardest thing is just to say to somebody that I'm not okay. And I'm doing that more and more and more. So, you know, there has been times, I'd say probably about 9 months ago, when the thoughts of I don't want to be here again, they're different now from the time when I actually didn't want to be here. They're more, no, this is just a feeling. This is just, you know, a difficult time at the moment. You are nowhere near rock bottom because you've been there before. And where I am now is not rock bottom. So now I can feel and sense how low I do get. And it's not anywhere near as low as, you know, previous times. You know, it's self-care, taking time for you, setting boundaries, saying what you need. That, you know, during lockdown, I said to my husband, I'm going to go out for a walk. I'm going to just go, you know, go and meet a friend when we're allowed. And I have to have a day where I just go out walking. You know, he doesn't really want to go camping. And I'm like, I have to go camping because just being out in the freedom in the middle of nowhere, just listening sometimes to nothing and looking at the stars is the most peaceful, grounding thing where you can allow to feel and allow to process any emotions that are there that you may be suppressing.
I love that. How to listen to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes there's so much in your head that you don't know where to start. You don't know how to fix any of it. But I mean, on the picture you're seeing where I went for a walk, it's called Noses Point. And just to sit there sometimes, and like you say, you listen to the waves, it empties the head. And it in a way, it gives me a sense of order and a sense of, right, okay, oh, actually, I was feeling a bit anxious when that happened. I wonder, you know, what's that relating to? Or, you know, that made me really angry because that person said that. But why? Why has that made me angry? And it gives yourself time to just stop, let the world rush around behind you and just focus on you. Because so many people don't focus on themselves. They're more worried about everybody else. But you forget about you, but you're the main person. That if you don't look after you, how can you look after your family or your kids?
Are there things that, because you talked about setting boundaries and, you know, we're talking about emotional intelligence. Are there things that you don't do now? For instance, I don't watch the news. I'll read the
Mm-hmm.
news, but it just undoes me. I don't watch the news. Are there things that you don't do because of it it's too much for you?
The news.
I mean, just in
So,
general, just anything,
yeah,
you
no,
know.
the news is a very big one. I don't retaliate a lot now. So, you know, I would get angry at everything, or say somebody posted something and I want to just scream back at them that it's all rubbish. When now I'm able to sit and probably empathize more or respect somebody more, where I had so much pent up anger, and at times that still happens. What else do I do? I'm a lot less. The kids, they would drive me insane, and I would just lose it with them. Now, if they're completely, drowning me out, I'm able to just stop a moment before I explode in order to just bring myself back in to then have a proper conversation, and to explain what they've done and educate them more, I set boundaries with my family. Well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, I should be opening up more to my family. Well, it's a personal thing for me at the moment. So if I don't want to travel down to yous, I don't want to travel down to yous because I don't want to. I'm not at the right time. I say no. Saying no is important.
I love that. Saying no is and
Mm-hmm,
without explanation, I think, I know for me, I'm learning that we can say no and we don't have to follow up with an explanation. No is enough.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And you don't need to know all the factors into it, except that. Um, but also, I love the fact that to go back just a little bit when you said,
mm-hmm,
in terms of expressing your emotions, of saying, "I'm not okay." And what I love about that phrase, "I'm not okay," is most of us don't have an extensive emotional vocabulary to
mm-hmm.
express what we are feeling. And if we just start off with, "I'm not okay," then that at least gets the conversation going. And someone who really cares about you, will help you dig a little deeper, or it'll get the ball rolling for you to accept that you're not okay and then to take some steps to move forward. Because I think it's so hard for most of us, even for myself,
Mm-hmm.
who has a master's in psychology. It's hard for me to decipher what I'm feeling, half the time. So to start with, "I'm not okay," is a beautiful and very easy entry point.
Without doubt, because there's too much of "I'm fine," but are you fine? Really? Like, what really is going on? Because "I'm fine" to me is just the worst thing you can say, I feel. But like you say, saying that "I'm not okay," but why are you not okay? What's happening? To be able to just unpick somebody, it's a conversation starter. Now, I didn't know anything about feelings or emotions or anything. And again, listening to Brené's podcast on Unlocking Us during this lockdown. I mean, I never read a book before lockdown. I don't even know what number book I'm on at the moment, but I read Permission to Feel by Mark Beckett.
I just listened to that.
Oh, gosh, that made me understand feelings and emotions, and that you are allowed to feel, that it's no sign of weakness. It's okay to feel, and it's not going to kill you, which I've fought in the past, that if I let anything in or I feel anything, it will break me.
And where did that idea come from? What I know you're doing the narrative story with your therapist. Where did that
Mhm.
idea that feeling something would break you?
I think, like I mentioned, you're not allowed to feel anything. You know, you can't show a sign of weakness. You show a sign of weakness within your company or your troop or your section, you are pointed out. You are, you know, I was pointed out. I was told, well, you're weak, you're pathetic, you know, you need to man up, that awful man up. And this was done by people that you think have your back. But I showed that sign of weakness and they jumped right on it. So it's easy enough just to show nothing, feel nothing. It's the safest thing to do. So, I didn't know about feelings. It was easy enough to just not feel.
And I know that you also have a dog. I'm sure that that's helped you to feel a lot of things because they have such unconditional love. Has that brought out some emotions or feelings and helped you in any way?
Oh, he's probably saved my life more times than one. There's a screensaver on my phone, and it's me looking at the dog, and the dog's looking at me, and it's in black and white, and it's overlooking where I used to sit at Nosey's Point. Now, before my last attempt, I would sit there and think, oh God, I just want to jump. I just want to fall and not feel and just end the pain inside me. But I lost a dog back in 2013, I think it was. 2014, I lost a dog. And then when we were in Cyprus and things started declining with my mental health, on the program on a radio station, they were like, oh, dogs are meant to be really good for PTSD, and they're meant to just show love and care and support. So that's how I got the husband to agree to have another one. And he's just a lifesaver. When we used to sit on the cliff edge, the only thing I could think of was I couldn't do it because I couldn't let him try and find his way home on his own because I knew he wouldn't. And I couldn't do that to him. So he stopped me in a way. But it is like the times when you're alone and you can just say, come here, boy, and, snuggle up and tell him that you're sad or tell him that you're just alone or upset or about anything. You just know it's not going to go any further.
I love that. I've never had a dog, but anytime someone has a dog, I can just feel myself completely softening immediately. Mm-hmm. So there is something to be said about having a pet. When we talk about emotions, and I don't know if you've been through this with your therapist, but have you noticed that you feel different emotions in different parts of your body?
Yeah, I do. I've got bilateral hip dysplasia, so my head of my femur doesn't fit in my hip sockets properly. So I've had a few surgeries on that. But along with that, I feel a lot of my tension, if I'm stressed or angry or I'm panicky or anything, it goes straight to my hips. I have an issue with my jaw called TMJ, and I have to wear a splint because of the grinding and the tension that it builds up. And you just clench your jaw. That you just, I think I started reading a book called "The Body Keeps a Score," but I couldn't because it was just wow, like what the body does because of trauma. It's unbelievable. I get pins and needles. My hands, like when I was driving, my hands clench around the steering wheel, like it just will not let go. What did I say the other day? It was like you're going to get put into a bin bag and just everything's going to be sucked out of you. Like every bit of progress, or it's sometimes really difficult to explain, but it's like somebody's just sinking you back down and just covering you back up and going, no, you're not allowed to grow, or you've got to be worried about it all. It's really crazy what the mind can make the body feel.
Absolutely. And I've heard from so many people about that book, Body Keeps the Score, that it's too much. It's too,
Hmm.
it's an amazing book, but it's also, because the stories are so specific and detailed and intense, that
Mm.
it's very much triggering or re-traumatizing for a lot of people.
Mm.
But it's got great reviews. But I haven't even read it, and because of that reason, and I've just like looked at the YouTube book reviews to
Yeah.
kind of get the gist of it.
Uh-huh. But it's what the body can do, the mind and the body, and the, what trauma does to your body, not just alone your mind, but what it does to your body. It's painful.
I would imagine also having a dog, having kids, and a husband. There are moments of extreme joy. Where do you feel that in the body?
Um, it's I would say my chest
Mm.
and the front of my head. You know, the front of the head, like that. Proud. I'm proud of them for sticking by me at my worst. You know, on the verge of being an alcoholic, and being distant and never wanting to be anywhere near them, just not even hold them or cuddle them. Can you just leave me alone kind of aspect. But I sit there now, and my son went for a run today. It's because he had to do it for PE, and he had to do a mile, and he came back, and I was like, wow. I was like, well done, because that is a good time for a mile when you've not done anything for ages because you've locked down and just sitting doing classroom work. And I did, my chest filled up with prideness because, well, I can feel that now, you know, I'm proud of them.
I can hear it in your voice.
Mm.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think would be of value to anyone struggling with depression, salt, anxiety, CPTSD?
You know, you need to be, you need to run your treatment. It's your treatment. You need to want it. And I just feel that if it's not right, say it's not right. Don't be this, as the military would say, yes, sir, no, sir, I'll just accept what I'm given. Because no, you're either not in the military no more, so you are allowed to say no, and you're allowed to say, I don't agree with that. Or you're still in the military and you have a voice and use it. There's so many people that get silenced. Um, and for anybody that's just starting their recovery journey, it's going to be the hardest time of your lives. But what it will grow into is special. I'd say even magical in a way. You know, I went for a walk the other day with a friend. She's not in the military, but she's been having struggles with her mental health, but she's one of the strongest people I know. And when we were out walking, I was just watching her, and it was just as if I could vision a jigsaw piece just filling her body, the outer scale of her body back up to feel whole again. And it was just what that nature walk did to her, was able to just keep going for another week, another month, another 2 months. It, I've wanted to quit so many times therapy because it's so hard. So hard. But to anybody that's just like say starting, please just keep going. You will have them ups and downs, and it's a roller coaster of emotions and pain and pure rawness. But never feel that you're alone, and always reach out. Even, I had panic attacks the other week, and I wrote a post and said, "Is anybody there to talk to a minute?" Because it scared me, and that's me now. So it's still hard, but it's manageable, and you'll learn so much coping mechanisms to enjoy the rest of your life, because you shouldn't feel imprisoned or punished or anyway like this. You need to be present, mindful, and happy as much as possible.
And last question, I always ask this of my guests because I always
Mhm.
imagine there's one person listening in who may be on the precipice of ending their life. Before you kill yourself, what would you say to them?
I would say that yes, it may feel like you are at rock bottom at the moment, but the only way is up. There is light. Light. The sun will rise again. You will feel and see light again. You know, that you're loved, you're worthy. Somebody, I don't care if you're a stranger and somebody called me and said, I'm about to kill myself. I would rather sit for hours on end trying to support somebody as much as I could possibly do before, finding them the correct help, than hear about it in the news or reading it in a paper or somebody informing me of that. Because you are so worthy and loved and mattered. And to anybody that's currently at that stage now, just reach out. And I always say, don't suffer in silence.
Thank you so much for taking this time to share. Uh, Tell people where they can find your blog and connect with you.
I'm on Twitter. That's where my blog is. I think my username is, I don't even know, KS 44234. And my blog is there in my bio. I'm on Instagram as Cara Sennett. Um, and again, on Instagram, I try and just share, nature walks or inspirational posts and things like that.
Cara, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. Remember, this podcast is not a substitute for you going to get help. Or you calling the 1-800-SUICIDE or 1-800-273-TALK. Or if you're international, like in England or Sri Lanka or Asia, there are international numbers listed in all of the show notes. So you can call, you can text, you can chat. There's someone who is willing to listen to you. And as I always say, you can call an enemy, call anybody, call customer service, but share your story. Let them know that you're not okay. And it's okay that you're not okay. You can always go to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching with yours truly. If you are struggling with feeling loneliness or abandoned, or if you want to feel empowered and find meaning, go to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching with yours truly. And let's get to tomorrow together. Thank you so much, Cara.
Thank you very much, Leo. Really good.